Hello, everyone. Another day in quarantine, but that means we get another couple chapters out of Maniac Magee. Already looked ahead at what we're going to read today. We're going to read two chapters today. We're going to start on chapter 31 and read chapter 31 and chapter 32 because that takes us to the end of part 2, beginning part 3 of our book. So, is that what chapter we're on? Yes. Yes, chapter 31. Here we go. It was still dark when Maniac awoke on Christmas morning. Within 2 hours, the holiday would come bounding down the stairs and squealing around the tinseled trees of 2 mills. But for the moment, Christmas bided its time outside, a purer presence. Maniac shook Grayson awake, but stayed the old man's hand when he reached to turn on the light. They bundled themselves and ventured into the silent night. Maniac carried a paper bag. Snow had fallen several days before. In much of the town it had been plowed, shoveled, and slushed away. But in the park, along the creek, the woods, the playing fields, the playground, it still lay undisturbed, save for the tracks of rabbits and squirrels. Beyond the tall pines, stars glittered like snowflakes, reluctant to fall. They visited their tree. They stood silently just to be near it, letting the magic of it drift over them. In the pine-patched moonlight, the Queen Anne's goblets looked for all the world like filigreed silver. They walked the creek woods all the way to the zoo, meandering wordlessly throughout the snowy enchantment. As if by design, they both stopped at the same spot, above the half-submerged, rooty clump of a fallen tree. Somewhere under the tree, they knew, was a den of muskrats. The old man laid a pine branch at the doorway. Maniac whispered, "Merry Christmas." They visited the animals at the zoo, at least the outdoor ones, wishing them a happy holiday. The ducks seemed particularly pleased to see them. By the time they came to the buffalo pen, dawn was showing through the trees. Before the old man finished saying, "Want a boost?" Maniac was up over the fence. If Mother Buffalo was glad to see the fence-hopping human again, she didn't show it. But Baby came trotting on over, and the two of them had a warm reunion. Before leaving, Maniac reached into his paper bag and brought out a present. "For you," he said. It was a scarf, or rather, 3 scarves tied together. He wrapped them around Baby's neck. "Next year, I'll get you stockings for your horns." He grinned, "if you haven't by then." A final nuzzle, and he was back over the fence. They headed back home as the town awoke. Breakfast was eggnog and hot tea and cookies and carols and colored lights and love. As in all happy Christmas homes, the gifts were under the tree. Maniac gave Grayson a pair of gloves and a woolen cap and a book. The book did not appear to be as sturdy as the others lying around. The cover was blue construction paper, and the spine, instead of being bound, was stapled. The text was hand-lettered, and the pictures were stick figures. The title was "The Man Who Struck Out Willie Mays." The author's name, which Grayson read aloud with some difficulty, was Jeffrey L. Magee. Maniac, in his turn, opened packages to find a pair of gloves, a box of butterscotch crimpets, and a spanking, snow-white, never-ever-used baseball. He was overjoyed. He rushed to the old man and hugged him. The old man put up with that for a second, then pulled away. "Hold on," he said. He went to one of the baseball equipment bags and reached in, tunneled down to the bottom, and came up with another package. This one wrapped crudely in newspaper. "Hide and listen," he said. "Didn't know if you were the kind of kid sneaking looks." Maniac tore it open and gaped helplessly when he saw what it was. To anyone else, it was a ratty old scrap of leather, barely recognizable as a baseball glove, fit for the garbage can. But Maniac knew at once that this was Grayson's, the one he had played with in all those years in the minors. It was limp, flat, the pocket long since gone. Slowly, timidly, as though entering a shrine, the boy's fingers crept into it, flexed, curled the cracked leather, brought it back to shape, to life. He laid the new baseball in the palm, pressed the glove and the ball together, and the glove remembered and gave way and made a pocket for the ball. The boy could not take his eyes off the glove. The old man could not take his eyes off the boy. The record player finished the Christmas polka and clicked off, and for a long time there was silence. 5 days later, the old man was dead. Chapter 32. Most mornings, Grayson would be the first one out of bed. He would turn on the space heater, visit the band shell lavatory, then heat up some water, get breakfast ready, and finally wake the boy with a gentle shake above the shoulder. On December 30th, it was the silence that woke Maniac, and the cold. The space heater wasn't on. No steaming cup sat on the table. The old man was still under the covers. Maniac went over. Grayson. He shook the old man. Grayson? He took the old man's hand. It was cold. Grayson! He didn't run to the superintendent's office. He didn't run to the nearest house. He knew. He held the cold, limp hand that had thrown the pitch that had struck out Willie Mays, that had betrayed the old man's stoic ways by giving him a squeeze. He began talking to the old man about places he had been on the road, about places the two of them might have gone, about everything. Then he began to read aloud. He read aloud all the books the old man had learned to read, and he finished with the old man's favorite, Mike Mulligan's steam shovel. When he looked out the window, it was night. He dragged his chest protectors alongside the old man's mat and lay down. And only then, when he closed his eyes, did he cry. The funeral, such as it was, took place on the third day of the new year. Maniac had at last gone to tell someone, zookeeper, and from then on, he pretty much stayed out of the way. Grayson came to the cemetery in a wooden box. The pallbearers were unknown to Maniac. They were members of the town's trash collecting corps, and they huffed and bent to lay the box over the hole. They smelled vaguely of pine and rotten fruit. Maniac was the only mourner. He had thought the park superintendent might show, or the attendant at the Y locker room, or maybe the lady who ran the park food stand in summer. None was there. Only Maniac and the man from the funeral home, and the 6 pallbearers, and 2 men off to the side, smoking cigarettes and leaning on the little hole-digging tractor that made Maniac think of something. He smiled inwardly. Hey, Grayson, look. Mike Mulligan's steam shovel had a baby. High above, a silver plane across the sky, silent as a spider. A voice startled Maniac. When's he coming? It was one of the pallbearers. The man from the funeral home pushed down the top of his black leather glove to expose his watch. Should be here by now. Should have been here 5 minutes ago. How long are we going to wait? The funeral man shrugged. All but one of the pallbearers lit up cigarettes. Maniac wished he hadn't come. This event had nothing to do with the man who once lived in the body in the wooden box. "I'm freezing out here," a pallbearer announced. "Me too," said another. "Hey, called one of the grave diggers. "We ain't waiting all day to fill that hole." Everyone looked to the man in the long black coat. He looked at his watch. "Traffic, probably." The minister, thought Maniac. That's who we're waiting for. Pallbearers walked over to the funeral man. "We hauled the stiff here. Ain't that enough? They only give us an hour." The pallbearer chimed in. "Let's go get some donuts." "Hot coffee." Loud clanks. The gravedigger was striking the baby steam shovel with a spade. Funeral man sighed, then he pulled out his own cigarette, lit from the glowing tip of the pallbearer's. "Give it 2 more minutes, then we'll see." Maniac waited for one of those minutes, searching the horizon for signs of a minister. Whatever was going to happen at the end of the next minute, he didn't want to see it. So he ran. "Hey, kid," they called. "Yo, kid." But he was running. Running. That's the end of part 2. Tomorrow we'll start part 3. Until then, remember, stay safe, stay healthy, stay home. Love you guys. We'll see you soon.